අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Sunday the 26th of March 2023. Achievements. TV Derana wins big at the 2022 Raigam Tellies, securing the award for the best television program channel of the year and most popular television news brand of the year. Double standards. During discussions with Harvard University, President critiques the double standards of the West in dealing with protests. Connectivity. Sri Lanka to commence operations of the ferry service between Kankasanthura and Pondicherry from April end.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. In your top story for tonight, now TV Derana won big at the 2022 Raigam Tellies last evening, securing the award for the best television program channel of the year. AdaDerana's news segment AdaDerana News bagged the award for the most popular television news brand of the year as well. In the meantime, Derana also bagged the awards for the best political talk show, best news segment and the special jury awards for the 2022 Raigam Tellies. At the 2022 Raigam Tellies last evening, TV Derana's political talk show Alut Parliamentuwa, produced by Prasad Kumarasuru and Padma Kumara Karunaratna, won the award for best talk show. The fourth edition of the program AdaDerana 60+, created by Vimukthi Rodrigo and Chaminda Tennakun, won the award for the best reality program, while the teledrama Heena Bandhana, directed by Atula Piris, was awarded the best teledrama. The teledrama Ape Chuti Du, meanwhile, won the award for the best dub program. AdaDerana's special investigation segment Ukusa won the best news segment award at the 2022 Raigam Tellies. The documentary program The Other Side on TV Derana, produced by KC Saranga, won the special jury award. TV Derana meanwhile won the best television program channel of the year award, while AdaDerana's news segment AdaDerana News bagged the award for the most popular television news brand of the year.
රයිගම් ටෙලිස් ජනතා සමීක්ෂණය අනුව කාලීන පුවත් පිළිබඳ පිපාසයෙන් සිටින රූපවාහිනී ප්‍රේක්ෂකයන් රටේ ලෝකයේ තොරතුරු දැන ගැනීම සඳහා වැඩියෙන්ම අසන දකින ප්‍රවෘත්ති විකාශය. එනම් වඩාත් ජනගත ප්‍රවෘත්ති විකාශය. AdaDerana News TV Derana.
යම් නාලිකාවක් විසින් දිනාගත් වැඩිම සම්මාන ගන්න වූ සම්මාන 6 දිනා ගනිමින් වසරේ සම්මානනීය රූපවාහිනී මාධ්‍ය වැඩසටහන් නාලිකාව ලෙස අභිෂේක ලබන්නේ TV Derana.
The Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Nandalal Virasinghe, emphasized on the importance of ensuring that the current reforms are seen through to the very end, as he believes that any reversal in the regulations could lead to the same crisis the country is facing. Speaking to Indivari Amawatta at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, he said that the introduction of the new CBSL Act is one such measure that should prevent the country from reversing to the same situation, as the government would not have the influence and this bank as it did in the past through the Treasury Secretary and the provisions that allow the CBSL to fund the budget deficit.
Do you think we will take the right necessary policies that will be consistent regardless of change of government?
That's one thing, getting people's buying in and getting overall people's support for these things to happen. Then the representatives always ask that people asking from them. That's the one thing. Other one is mainly the understanding, is communication, and also other part is that everyone should understand anything going beyond or differently, and we will go back to the same problems. For example, that is why we need to have a strong institutions and mechanism and rules and regulations in place to ensure at least prevent us going back. For example, these are some of the reforms that the government has committed. One is the central bank independence. That is to strengthen the central bank independence so that it would not be under any administration, would not go back to implement or have fiscal dominance in monetary policy. That is prevent that. Fiscal consolidation, the fiscal rules. There is a Fiscal Management Responsibility Act which is supposed to, for the Parliament to take actions if they miss the target. It is only explanatory thing and go to the Parliament, explain and then go back to the same thing. In this reform, the commitment is that you bring in several necessary laws that even the government within the Parliament, they will have to follow the same path, fiscal consolidation. If there is a deviation, there has to be automatic reversal and adjustment. And they come back to the same path within the institutional, strengthening institution, having those laws. That is why we call strong fiscal rules that should be followed by the Parliament under fiscal management, and also other process of independent budget office. And they independently look at all the government budget proposals under any administration, give their views, these are sustainable or not, or feasible. That independent checks and balances should be there. And independent institutions, the judiciary, the central bank, and other independent commissions through proper checks and balances, and strengthen those institutions and ensure those independent institutions would be able to carry out their policies independently, what is right for the country, not the most popular and right policies, not popular policy.
The Treasury Secretary is not going to be part of the new Monetary Policy Board. If you can explain to us about this and how such act is going to strengthen any reform agenda.
Even current Central Bank Act, we call Monetary Law Act, has in my view has sufficient independence, but there are certain weaknesses. Historically, why we are in this situation, mainly because of the fiscal policy and without understanding proper fiscal policy and monetary policy. Fiscal policy by the Parliament and Minister of Finance, monetary policy for the country by the central bank, independent authority. So when the fiscal policy dominating monetary policy and fiscal policy influencing central bank to print money as and when they want to print money, this is a major weakness. How that happened in the current Monetary Law Act, Central Banking Act, there is a provision the government, Minister of Finance, can influence central bank to print money in simple terms to finance budget deficit, and the government can influence because there are two ways. One is there is a provision in the law. Second, not Secretary of Treasury sitting at the Monetary Board as one of the members. There are 5 members, governor is the chairman of the Monetary Board, Secretary of Treasury is the ex-officio member, then 3 independent appointed members. But when Secretary of Treasury representative Minister of Finance, government at the Monetary Board, obviously there is a tendency because he has to, he or she will have to deal with their mandate, that is fiscal policy. When they find it difficult to finance budget deficit out of the market or other sources, obviously there is a tendency they would influence. That has been happened throughout several decades since the central bank was established. That is the reason why we were having very high inflation historically in this country, because of the fiscal dominance and fiscal influence in the monetary policy. This is to address that. This is why Secretary of Treasury is no longer a member of the monetary body that governs the central bank. That's the first part. Second one, it will be prohibited for the central bank to directly finance budget deficit through subscription to the primary auctions and buying treasury bills directly from the primary auction. That's the second source. So what's the difference between public finance and the country finance? So if you look at the whole country finance, that includes your money in the bank, my money in the bank, and public finance is what is in the consolidated fund, taxpayers' money in the treasury account. If you look at the whole country finances, treasury finance is only 20% of the whole country finance. It's a subset of the whole country finance. So if the treasury, that 20% trying to control money in your account and my account, then it will be a disaster.
Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe critiqued the West for their double standards in dealing with the protest during a discussion with the Harvard University. The head of state responded to a question on the Prevention of Terrorism Act used by Sri Lankan authorities against the protesters in the recent past. He questioned as to why the West can prevent the capital from being taken over, but as to why can't the Sri Lankan parliament being taken over be prevented.
The day after your inauguration in July, military and police forces were used against protesters in Colombo, with more than 50 people, including lawyers and journalists, beaten and injured. The Human Rights Watch has reported that the Prevention of Terrorism Act has been used to detain individuals without charges.
Now the Human Rights Watch talks of protesters being beaten up the day after I became president. Not so. There were protesters who were trying to take over parliament. And it was at that stage that the police intervened and the army intervened. My house was burnt. I lost 3,000 books. They were burnt by some of the protesters, some of whom were very educated people. We are repairing the president's house, which is costing us about 2 to 3 billion rupees. So amidst the protesters who went in were also rogues and others. As far as we are concerned, I would not have allowed anyone to come into the house just as much as you're having inquiries in regard to the January 6th riots. So if you can prevent the capital from being taken over, why is it that you can't prevent the Sri Lankan parliament from being taken over? Why is it that you're using these double standards? I believe in peaceful protest. And that's one thing that can't be said against me. As Prime Minister, I brought in legislation which did away with criminal defamation. We are the only country in South Asia without criminal defamation. I brought in the Right to Information Act. 3 times I brought in the constitutional amendments which established independent commissions, including the human rights commissions. Now why should I go and stop all this? I am the one who had done it. Why should I suppress the rights? But we had a time when the parliament and the whole system was under. And that was the time that the army stepped in. And at that time, yes, 2 people were taken under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Isn't it? Catching hold of getting the president's house, taking over the government officers, taking over the prime minister's officers, and marching on to parliament. What do you call that? To throw the MPs out and say that we are going to overthrow the government. But I sorted it out. I didn't go to, once the period was over and things had cooled off, we let them off. I could have kept them on for months and months. No, I didn't do that because we want democracy to function. So what the human rights has put down here is without inquiry. And I am meeting with Amnesty International in the next few days. If I had anything to hide, I will not meet with Amnesty International.
We talked about the Prevention of Terrorism Act. It's been used. I'm just curious about your thoughts on future use of that act, but also what concrete steps are you taking to restore the rights for peaceful protest and release those who were detained without due process?
Firstly, the right to peaceful protest is there. A lot of people are protesting. It happens when there's violence. There are 2 groups which say that we want to clash with the government. We are going to overthrow the government. That is what you call the Progressive Socialist Front. So what can you do if they come and clash with the police and if they are not peaceful? That's all that I could tell you. As far as people, no, there were 3 people whom we detained and they have all been released. Before the 3-month period was up, to extend the detention, they were released as things in the country were peaceful. And I had hoped that they will not go on the rampage again. Unfortunately, they are on the rampage. So what can I do? Then the police will have to. I am certainly not using the detention powers of the president. Rest of the detentions will be by the courts.
Now, the Election Commission has requested Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena in writing for a discussion regarding the holding of the 2023 local government election. The chairman of the Election Commission, Nimalji Puncheheva, stated that the request was made in order to discuss the issues pertaining to holding of the 2023 LG polls. The election body also mentioned that they hope to draw attention to the payment of salaries to public employees who are contesting as candidates in the LG elections during the meeting. Recently in Parliament, PM Dinesh Gunawardena stated that he was decided to call the commission for a discussion regarding the 2023 polls. Now, the executive director of PAFREL, Rohana Hettiarachchi, says that his organisation will sought legal action against the Minister of Finance for not releasing the funds allocated for the elections from the budget 2023 as per the Supreme Court decision. Addressing a media briefing today, Hettiarachchi said that the government has not prepared to hold the elections within the next couple of months and added that the executive does not value the voice of the people.
Sri Lanka, democratically, we are facing very challenging situations at the moment. We realize that the government is going to appoint a committee on local councils, and also they are going to appoint a committee on provincial council as well. So this shows us that the government is not prepared to have any elections during next couple of months period. So this really shows us that the executive is going to control all the two layers, the local council as well as the provincial council. So this is very dangerous situation. Is one person is controlling the entire missionary in the country, and also the parliament, we realize that it's work according to the executive. So this is very dangerous situation. And also we noted that the executive doesn't care about the system, and the executive doesn't value the people's voice. The executive doesn't serious about the constitutions. Executive is not respecting the judiciary. So this is the situation where we are now. So this is very critical. We as the elections observers group, we humbly request all the politicians who are representing the parliament that you need to take a serious thought on these situations. It may be good environment for some of the parliamentarians who are engaged with the ruling party, but it can be backfire after some time. So we need to safeguard the democracy. We need to safeguard the electoral system, electoral democracy, whoever run in the country. As PAFREL, we are planning to go to court and challenge again the finance minister who is not respecting the judgment, and also who is the responsible to release the money which has allocated by the 2023 budget.
And we'll be back with your business segment right after this short commercial break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්
Apico Super Center, Arudu Super Shopper. Amazing 50% discounts. Shop for 7,500 rupees or more with an Apico Privilege card, including 5 nominated brands.
Let's go! Apico Super Center.
Welcome back. Now, Sri Lanka will be commencing the operations of the ferry service between Kankasanthare and Pondicherry on the 29th of April. According to the Ministry of Shipping, Ports and Aviation, a passenger terminal is currently being constructed at the Kankasanthare port to facilitate this ferry service. During a discussion with Subject Minister Nimal Siripal de Silva, ferry owners have said that they will be charging $50 from a passenger for a one-way trip, and only daytime operations will be in effect during the first stage.
A discussion on the proposed ferry service between Pondicherry and India and Kankasanthare in Sri Lanka was held on Friday under the patronage of Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripal de Silva. The meeting was also joined by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, officials of the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Sri Lanka Navy and the owners of ferries and companies that have expressed interest to operate ferry services. According to the subject minister, the first ferry line of the new ferry service to be operated between Karaikal Port in Pondicherry and the Kankasanthare is scheduled to call on the 29th of April at the port of Kankasanthare. During the discussion, it was revealed that a passenger terminal is in the process of being built at the Kankasanthare port under the infrastructure development for the new ferry service. The Sri Lanka Ports Authority has provided a financial facility of Rs 144 million for the total constructions that are carried out by the Sri Lanka Navy. The terminal, upon completion of its construction, is expected to be handed over to the SLPA by the second week of April. The ferry service owners at the discussion revealed that $50 will be charged from a passenger for a one-way trip. A ferry is expected to carry 150 passengers at a time and will take around 4 hours to travel from the Karaikal port to Kankasanthare. Ferry service owners emphasize that only one daytime operations will be in effect during the first stage of operations. The minister also stated that the expansion activities of the port of Kankasanthare will be expedited from the Sri Lankan government has already requested $16 million from the Indian Exim Bank due to the credit grant facility granted by India for constructions becoming insufficient at present.
The UNDP resident representative in Sri Lanka, Azusa Kubota, called on the Sri Lankan government to focus on attracting businesses that can act with social responsibility in a bid to protect the environment and water systems that are highly vulnerable to climate change. She made these comments while addressing an event to celebrate the World Water Day. While expressing the importance of the IMF deal to boost creditor confidence, Minister of Water Supply Jeevan Thondaman is of the view that Sri Lanka should have homegrown solutions for its own problems, adding that the IMF is not the only solution in achieving sustainability.
An event to celebrate the World Water Day was held recently at the National Water Supply and Drainage Board in Ratmalanda, under the patronage of UNDP resident representative in Sri Lanka, Azusa Kubota, and Minister of Water Supply Jeevan Thondaman.
The 2030 Sustainable Development Report indicated that Sri Lanka's progress towards SDG as moderately improving yet insufficient to attain goal. And further, 2022 report said there are major challenges remaining. Although Sri Lanka is surrounded by a big body of water, it is experiencing water stress. And this is largely due to the lack of efficient management of water resources, particularly fueled by climate change impacts, competing and increasing demand for water as an emerging economy, and changing land use patterns. We must acknowledge that investing in water and sanitation has direct impact on the overall sustainable development. In times of a global economic crisis, it is difficult to expand the resource envelope without applying innovative financing solutions. UNDP, therefore, has been working with the Sustainable Development Council on SDG budget tagging exercises, which will allow the government to critically monitor the use of public resources in important SDG areas. Also, we have been supporting the Board of Investment with the SDG Impact Investor MAC. It is high time to attract environmental and socially responsible businesses so they invest in much needed infrastructure that will facilitate access to safe and reliable water. We must also explore innovative financing mechanisms. Many governments around the world are considering sustainable and innovative ways to generate revenue, to invest in projects that will protect the environment while also advancing SDGs.
I assure you we are giving emphasis and importance to providing water and sanitation to the vulnerable groups. I do feel there is a need to modernize water supply and sanitation in Sri Lanka. There is also a need to make it sustainable because right now in the situation we are in, majority of our problems stem from financial issues, and that in turn creates barriers in providing clean drinking water and sanitation as well. Many people would have heard the news that IMF has come on board and how we all are going to get out of this mess. IMF is not a solution to the mess we are in. After all the protests, after all the issues that had taken place, we have to understand that we need homegrown solutions to sustain our economy. And the more we are reliant on external players or external stakeholders, it's not sustainable. We can't have a country, especially for these kids, built on loans and wealth of other countries. You know, that's not how healthy economy works. But one thing why people should be positive about IMF coming on board, more than the $2.9 billion EFF facility, I think we have to note the fact that this gives us creditor confidence. And when creditors have confidence, we will be able to take the country forward.
Now, IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva says that risks to financial stability have increased and called for continued vigilance although actions by advanced economies have calmed market stress. The IMF, which has predicted global growth of 2.9% this year, is slated to release new forecasts next month. Georgieva said that policymakers in advanced economies had responded decisively to financial stability risks in the wake of bank collapses, but even so vigilance was needed. She also warned that geo-economic fragmentation could split the world into rival economic blocs, resulting in a dangerous division that could leave everyone poorer and less secure. Georgieva said that China's strong economic rebound with projected GDP growth of 5.2% in 2023 offered some hope of the world economy, with China expected to account for around one-third of the global growth in 2023. She said that the IMF estimates that every 1 percentage point increase in GDP growth in China results in a 0.3 percentage point in growth in other Asian economies. And that's all the news we have for this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. A pleasant evening and good night.